Lane, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
It's great to be here.
So I want to dive into your world of adoption and being an author and all of everything that makes you who you are. And to begin the journey, I want to know 5 years ago, we're coming up on the anniversary of this pandemic. How did living through that time period influence and affect the way that you approach and do things now?
Well, it was interesting because my book was published towards the end of the pandemic. It came out last year, but a lot of work on that book took place during the pandemic, between the publisher and me. Um, our kids, and the focus of my book is the adoption of our kids from foster care. At the time they were in high school, so of course it was really affecting them. All four of us were at home, all four of us were working from home, and so this was a very interesting time. But
Okay.
my book goes kind of really focuses on the first, I would say, 3, 4 years of their lives, because that's really the process that I wanted to highlight, the journey of adopting from foster care.
So let's get into what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you
Okay, sure.
in front of a bunch of grade school kids. Let's say they're fifth graders. It's career day. The kid in the back of the room is curious and he's like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you
Oh,
answer him?
I teach English. That's what I do.
Okay.
I'm a college professor. I've been teaching for 20 years, English as a second language and linguistics. And that I really enjoy doing it. So yeah, that's what I do. That's what I do.
So talk to me a little bit about what you wanted to be when you were in the fifth grade. What was your dream life? What did you want to grow up and become?
Fifth grader. It's interesting. I think I wanted to be a journalist,
Okay.
and I was also interested in history. Um, and I guess in the end, I sort of ended up doing, I mean, I had a pretty circuitous path to where I am right now, through music and marketing communications, PR, and then going back to grad school and teaching English. But I write quite a bit. I publish a lot in the media, on parenting, on spiritual growth and things like that. So yeah, I sort of ended up doing what I wanted to do when I was a fifth grader. So I think there is a certain trajectory in life that you follow
Yeah.
unconsciously.
Yeah, for sure. So what was one of the more formative early books in your life that either made you want to read more or become a writer?
Hmm. That's a good question because, for some reason I always liked nonfiction,
Yeah.
and I was really nerdy. I was really nerdy. I mean, I like the, adventure novels and, Moby Dick and Three Musketeers and all that good stuff. But I also liked reading, you wouldn't believe this, but it's true. The essays of Michel Montaigne, who was really the father of the nonfiction genre, who would just kind of come up with a topic and write whatever would pop into his head.
Yeah.
And even though he wrote it in his essays in the 16th century, they're very fresh and very readable. And amusing and self-deprecating and everything. So it's like, so I would just pick up the book and, his book of essays, and just read from any point in the book. So that was something that stayed with me. Actually, I have a pretty worn out copy of Montaigne right there on the shelf.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you this. Let me kind of further this a little bit more. Who has
Mhm.
been kind of an inspirational force? Who's been a hero, whether literary or otherwise, that's fueled who you are in your life?
I've had a few people who were my heroes, I guess. I would say when it comes to writing, it's Joan Didion.
Yeah.
She is it's not it's the mixture of the personal and political that really appeals to me. Also, her sort of like a microscope view at life here in America. She really gets to the heart of it, kind of dissects it. Um, and
Yeah.
her style, which is on one hand, like it's very readable and flows, but on the other hand, it's very well put together and elevated. So I think that, yeah, and I teach one of her books. I teach, I use The Year of Magical Thinking in one of
Yeah,
my classes.
yeah.
And so that's a great book, and I've read pretty much everything she's ever written. Yeah, she's a great writer, and she's also I also like her take on life in California and in the United States, exactly because she's from California. She's from Sacramento,
Yeah.
and even though she lived in New York, but then she went back to Malibu, so she writes and she sees this country and this society as a Californian.
I read her in college and it really turned me on my ear. I hadn't read anybody like that with that level
Mhm.
of just her insight, like you said, just the kind of like scoping in and getting into it and really deconstructing things. And yeah, she's wonderful. In fact, you've inspired me. I'm
Mhm.
a big audiobook reader and I just put Blue Nights on hold, so I'm excited.
Well, Blue Nights is a sequel to The Year of Magical Thinking. I would also recommend I think it's called Where I Was Born or Where I Grew Up. Maybe where I was, well, no, where I'm from,
Okay.
which is about her roots in California, but also her sort of view of the state and the country from
Okay.
that particular angle. It's more autobiographical in terms of her early life,
Okay.
and it's quite interesting, quite
Yeah, I'll
interesting.
delve into that. Yeah. So
Mhm.
take me back to your childhood, where you were born and raised. What were the foundational elements of not only you getting into literature and becoming a professor, but
Hmm.
becoming an adoptive parent? How did these foundational elements get woven, the seeds get woven to evolve into who you are?
Um, I was raised primarily by my grandparents. So the idea that I've been given a lot of interviews recently, and I'm often asked, does it take a mother and a father, to raise a child? And I say it takes a res a responsible adult. And so I think in that sense, my grandparents were those responsible adults who raised me and who in many ways shaped me the way I am. So that was one thing that I learned, I would say, looking back at my childhood. Um, and secondly, I always saw myself as a future dad. The vision I had, even starting probably some point in my teenage years. I mean, I knew I was gay. I mean, that was clear to me, and I saw myself as sort of like a single gay dad with two kids. Well, I ended up being a married gay dad with two kids, but I was sort of like approaching that. I was approaching that vision but I first saw when I was a child.
So,
Probably because I helped to raise my younger sister, who
yeah.
was about 8 years younger. So I've always been more than just kind of big brother, kind of like a secondary father figure to her, and we remained close. Um, so I saw myself in my future as an adult. I saw myself raising kids, and I knew that if I don't have kids, that I will never be fulfilled. I knew that too.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, especially in what the way that you have decided to, adopt and live your life, who's been inspirational? Who's been kind of somebody you would like to meet that might help you on your journey that you're fascinated by?
Hmm. That's a good question because, you can tell by my accent that I wasn't born in the United States. I came here with my family as a refugee from the Soviet Union. So that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But still, I wasn't born here. I was not quite a product. So the difficulty for me as a gay man was not to come out because I was out to myself and I was out to my parents. But the difficulty for me was to find myself as an immigrant in this gay universe, which is like a whole sort of a subset of life, where I really didn't know anything. I mean, I had no exposure to what people say, how people act, where they go, and so that was the challenge. And I kind of wish I had a mentor to walk me through through the scene
Yeah.
and teach me, but I didn't. I kind of had to learn everything by hand. So yeah, that was difficult. That was difficult. I don't think I really had a mentor or a person that I looked up to. I mean, there've been really great writers and composers and musicians, and they all inspired me in many ways. Sinead O'Connor would be probably one.
Yeah.
And the combination of talent and also honesty always appealed to me. So yeah, performers like that would have been my inspirations.
The one thing about writing a book is that it's a personal journey. It takes a lot of time, and those that haven't written a book
Hmm.
probably need to realize from the inception of the idea to the actual book that gets placed in your hands, it's a long, arduous process. And I'm sure along the way, there's been parts of this in anybody's personal journey where you have to or you have to get in front of things that may be unpleasant or
Hmm.
things that you may not want to deal with because you already dealt with it. In writing this book, what was it that you had to really take a look at and figure out that may have been painful? And what did you learn about yourself in this process that you didn't realize?
No, it was a tremendous process of self-discovery. I mean,
Yeah,
really, it's not through adopting children and through raising them. Of course, you discover so much more about it, about yourself. Um, I would say that we adopted two kids from foster care. The younger one was a newborn, so what I'm going to talk about didn't really affect her, but her sister was already one, and we were not the first foster home she was placed in, so she had a pretty rough first year of her life, and so I could in some ways relate to that because I wasn't raised by my parents, most of the time either. So the issues of parental abandonment, attachment, the interplay of the two was something that it brought up in me as well. As she was struggling through that as a baby, and I could see that I could relate to it, I could read it because that is something I could first experience firsthand myself. That was one, I would say, unpleasant emotion. Another one was anger. And the anger was at the double stigma that we faced at that time. We're talking about early 2000s when we were, this was before marriage equality and equal rights. So we were treated, as a gay couple adopting from foster care as a gay family, we were definitely treated as second class and in many ways unwanted. Not so much by the system, but I would say by the general sort of political climate at the time.
yeah,
Um, Even by the time we finalized our second adoption, we were still two single men, interesting enough, adopting who are the fathers of two related children so we couldn't get married in the eyes of the federal government and when we got married but if we crossed the state lines our parental rights could have been abridged. It was a mess. It was a
yeah,
big discriminatory mess, but that was just one stigma. The other stigma, which is just as important, was the stigma of us being foster adoptive parents, which means that in the process, in the foster adoption process, we were again treated as unwanted and as an undesirable option, even though we were the real parents to these kids.
yeah,
And by real, I mean raising them 24/7, day after day, week after week, year after year, as
yeah,
it happened. But we were excluded from the legal process, which was deciding the fate of these children, of the children that we were raising.
yeah,
So I was very angry at that, and that drove me. Well, during the process, actually, I sort of channeled that energy into fighting for the best for our kids and for us as a family. But also, it also drove me to write the book because I wanted to share this experience. I wanted to tell other people this is what it's really like when you go in and you try to adopt and you're treated as less than, as really not even part of the process, even though you are the parent,
yeah.
the
So,
real parent.
so when you look back on your life, and let's say when you were younger, if someone said you're gonna adopt a few kids, would you believe them? Would you ever have believed this would have been your route?
I could have, yeah, I might have believed them, yeah.
So,
because it fit my vision of who I wanted to be.
yeah. So how do you balance this life of, you're teaching others, you're taking on the responsibility of
Mm.
teaching other humans very essential things. You're in an adoptive role. You got to take care of your soul and who you are. What is your motivation every day to wake up and to do all of these things at the best of your ability?
Well, they're not exactly disconnected, I would say, because when you teach English as a second language, and I teach it at the college level, at Los Angeles City College, I don't just, teach my students. I teach advanced writing and reading and grammar. So I don't just pass the skills of, of writing and reading and grammar and whatever they are. I also advocate for my students because language is so much more when your life really in your new country depends on it. The bulk of my students are immigrant students, and so they need this advanced language in order to not to survive. This is way past the survival level, but to be able to uh, sort of form new identities and start new careers and really achieve, their dreams and achieve real success in this country as opposed to just stay at the bottom.
Yeah.
So at this point they realize that they need those language skills in order to make it there. So I advocate for them. We also I also advocate politically through all kinds of my field is actually very politically active because we've always had to protect our field from cuts
Yeah.
and disappearance because there's always been sort of like, well, we don't need this. But if our profession does not exist, if our subject does not exist, then there's a huge gap between um, what people without advanced levels of a language can do in this country. So yes, I advocate for them. And in some ways, also, I should say that even though my classroom is an adult classroom, my students are usually like age like 25 to 75, whoever's there. Usually, most of them like around 35, 45, because their kids are in school, but the adults are now back, in college to become, whatever they want to become, X-ray technicians, accountants, transfer to university, whatever they want. So, um, but in some ways, I mean, I'm very paternal in the classroom. So I think there's very little difference between I used to parent my kids at home and I, um, and I work with my students in the classroom. Very sort of hands-on, caring, but also strict. So I think it's very similar.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you walked into a room right now with
Mm.
everybody that you've worked with, even students, those that have read your book, that know you in a more professional light, and you could walk up to that podium and tell them one fun thing, one fun story about you, what would you tell them?
A fun story. Um, well, I have to think about that one.
Yeah.
Fun story. I don't know if it's a fun story, but it's a story which relates to our talk.
Yeah.
Um, and I hope my daughter will forgive me for sharing it. But recently, she lost her wallet, which had her Social Security card in it. So I took her to the Social Security office to apply for the new card, and we brought the documents and everything, and we walked in, and we sat down, and then we were called to the counter to the window, and we sat in front of the window, and I realized I've been here before. I've been exactly in this Social Security office at this very window because it hasn't changed in 15 years. It has still had that Formica, you know, counter and the windows and like nothing has changed one bit in 15 years. It was the same Social Security office as it was, all these years back. And the lady behind the glass asked her to confirm her name and then confirm her, basically her parents. And she before she went into it, I interjected and I said, "Excuse me," I said, at the time when we applied for Social Security card, we couldn't apply as I said our daughter has two dads, but at that time we couldn't apply as two dads. Um, because it was either mother or father. So we're given a choice: either she only has one parent, which is a father, and no mother, or one of you would have to be the mother. And the woman behind the glass said, "Are you Lane Igoudin, the mother?" I said, "Yes, I am."
So, how did it all turn out? Did everything get recovered? Everything good?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. It
Okay,
got
all right,
reissued, and so she got it. Yeah.
good, good. That's awesome. So,
Uh,
of everything that you've done and accomplished and overcome and become in your life, what are you the proudest of?
can you repeat this question again?
So, of everything that you've done and become in your
Mhm.
life, what are you the proudest of?
What I'm most proud of?
Yeah,
I think of raising our family against many odds.
yeah,
I'm proud, but I also feel very blessed that I had the opportunity to do that because there's so many places where you never mind, raising a family, you'd just be persecuted.
yeah,
So yes, yeah, but it's not easy. As any parent, that's listening to our conversation right now would know, it's hard. It's hard, and in this society, and also when you raise kids, they're always a little bit ahead of you.
yeah,
So I feel like I always play catch up to them. Like, they're preteens. I kind of got this down. Now they're teens. They're teens. Now they're like young ladies. So like I have to always learn the new sort of set of parenting skills as I get into the next age group.
yeah.
So yeah, but yes, I'm proud of it, and it's been a tremendous experience, and I really really despite all the difficulties that you may glimpse, and I expose them because I want you to know about them. I would never ever discourage anyone from trying out the foster adoptive route to build their family.
So, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends,
Mm.
students, readers of your book, everybody that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Well, I see myself as a dad. I see myself as a writer and a teaching professor. So I guess those three components are probably the most important parts of my identity
Yeah.
at this point.
So if anyone out there is interested to take this further and they want to pick up the book or they want
Mhm.
to reach out to you or anything in your world, where's the best place to go?
Well, the book is published by a traditional publisher called Hooligan Press of Portland State University, and is distributed to regular stores. But you can find it on Amazon, Bookshop, wherever books are sold. If you'd like me to sign it for you, you can get it on my website. And speaking of the website, I do have a pretty active website where I basically, which I update with everything that I do. So it's laneigoudin.com, LANEIGOUDIN.com. You can also find me on social media at Lane Igoudin on Instagram and Facebook, or just send me an email, laneigoudin@gmail.com.
Okay, Lane, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much, Joe. This is great.
Absolutely. Thank you. Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.